So this is a perfect example of how working on one thing invariably leads you down a rabbit trail of other things that need addressing.
Buckle up for safety as I give you a day in the life of online. No, not online. I'm actually there. Facilities maintenance.
Here at the elementary school to change out the hot water tank on the right. It is leaking. And yeah, it's 15 years old. It's done its time. So first steps, sanitize my hands. No, I'm just kidding. First thing I need to do is shut off the water. Now I've already shut off the water going into the tank that I'm going to be replacing. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to shut off the water to both tanks because this is our cold water feed coming in, runs into this side of this tank and runs into this side of this tank, and it has shut-off valves on it. Haven't been moved in a while, they're a little stiff, but I have to do that because there's no shut-off on the hot side. And if there was a shut-off up here and a shut-off up here, I could completely isolate this tank, keep the system running while I work on the one side, but there isn't. So I need to shut off the water supply to both tanks and actually drain the hot water system. First challenge I invariably run into every single time I have to work on something where I need to shut the power off is that the labeling is for the most part all wrong on these panels, because when the school was built and the electrical panels and all the services were wired based on the room numbers and location areas that were written on the plan. And when the school took occupancy, they decided to change all the room numbers based on the way they wanted the layout to be. As such, nothing aligns with the panels, even though I am not removing this tank. I am going to open up the cover here, because when I shut off the breaker, I want to be able to confirm that the power is off. So that tells me that it's not off, and so I will go and flip breakers and see what happens. So this is what I'm talking about. Even though 20 and 22 right here are for tank number 2, and 24, 25, and 26 right here are listed for tank number 1, and I've turned these off. These are still energized. So yeah, always confirm. So even though those other breakers were beside each other in the other panel, we know it's not that one. So I have one here that says domestic water hot, number 1, room 120. The storage room is room 121. Let's find out if it used to be room 120. And it did. Good. Okay. Power's off in the second tank, which means I can now safely drain the tanks without damaging the heating elements in the tank that we're not removing. So as I'm disconnecting tank number 2, I can see here that whoever did the electrical connection here did not do it well. These wires need to be twisted together prior to putting the wire nut on, which means I'm going to check the other side. I've left this open because that'll remind me that I need to turn the breaker back on and whatnot. But yeah, if I look at this, yeah, look at that. One wire's, the bare wire on the red is twice the length of the bare wire on the white. They're not twisted together, so yeah, before we put this tank back into service, I will clean up those electrical connections as well. So this is a perfect example of how working on one thing invariably leads you down a rabbit trail of other things that need addressing. Okay, let's pull the wiring out of the tank that I'm removing. Nothing is easy. Okay. Free and clear. Now, before I can drain this tank, and the hot water lines, I need to figure out the breaker for the circulation pump, because if we drain the lines and it continues to run, it'll be running dry, and yeah, it'll just burn out. So now the hunt begins to find the breaker that will shut off the circulation pump in the storage room. I can do what I've done in the past and just short out the wires and see which breaker trips. So my favorite tool for shorting out wires is this hammer. Fiberglass handle, rubber grip, so I'm completely insulated, and you can see by the scorch marks on here that we've been down this road before. Closing my eyes because, you know, parking and looking at the sun and all that. There you go. That's now off, probably. Yep. Let's go find the breaker. But before we do that, can we just admire these new arcing scorch marks on this hammer? I mean, that looks like welding. I found our breaker. It's 111 on our middle panel, and it is labeled as exterior lighting. Of course it is. This is what I'm talking about. Yeah, there's no way I would have made the guess that exterior lighting was actually supposed to be circulation pump, but I will update that now. So now that that is shut off, I can drain the system, and yeah, hopefully this doesn't take us too long. We'll see. 1 hour later, we're still draining the system. And I'm starting to get really impatient. Because I know there's no water coming down through the cold side, I may start removing this. Just cut this off. It's not like I'm working in a hospital where a disruption is critical. But people, they don't like their routines changed. And I get it. But sometimes we need to fix stuff. And in order to do that, we have to shut off certain systems. Fortunately, they've still got cold water, so toilets can flush. Wherever there's a normal hot and cold water faucet, they've still got cold water for washing. And water stations. Some of the pressure balanced faucets in the bathrooms are affected, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is. We do our best. Well, as much as I would have made for some exciting video footage, I needed two hands. So, there. The cold side is completely disconnected. But of course, I can't help but wonder just how much hot water would come out of that hot side if I cut that pipe off. What I need is a pipe freezer. Do you know plumbers have those? It's a clamp that they can put on here, and using carbon dioxide, actually freeze a section of the pipe, which essentially acts like a shutoff valve, which would then allow a person to completely remove this without any water spillage. It's amazing, and it's out of our budget. And still we wait. Yes! Finally! See, going for lunch fixes everything. Alright. Now I can cut that other side and remove this tank. Still waiting for the drips to stop so I can melt the solder and remove the fitting. And then every once in a while somebody will open up a tap and inadvertently triggers something like this, which means more waiting. Well, I finally got the old copper out of there, and so now I just got to clean up the insides really well. I'll take some emery cloth in here as well, so that we can make a good solder seal. Okay, here's something I didn't anticipate, because the new tank is about 1.5 inches in diameter larger. Check this. Because it's tight against the rail, which secures the strap, it puts me off by that much. So, options. I could put some flexible lines on here, which I might do, or I cut these brackets that are mounted to the wall, which by code are required to be there in order to strap the tank down, which means that a couple of short flexible lines might actually be the way to go here. Okay, which also means that I need to get a couple of different male fittings for these in order to attach those lines. Looks like a later day than I thought. Okay, and I'm back. Can you believe that these guys are $12 a piece now? It is ridiculous. Anyway, I have to go to a male fitting on here and put a flexible line to connect it. That's just the only reasonable way to do it, because I'm not going to mess with all of this 2-inch piping up here. That would just be a nightmare. Alright, I'm happy with that. The reason I was heating on one side and applying the solder from the other is because the heat will draw the solder fully around the fitting, and so you end up with a complete seal all the way around. It'll draw it around and up into. It's pretty cool. Science. A little more solder than I needed, but still, it's very nice. These flexible lines that I found are both ULC and CSA approved, so I am hoping that they will do the trick. I guess we'll find out if they don't. Okay, so this would be funny if it weren't so disappointing. There just isn't enough room. It looks like I'm going to have to get a 3/4 inch threaded 90-degree street elbow to put onto here, which will allow me to attach this line. Okay, problem solved. I looked all over the place. I believe these are the only 2 street elbows, 3/4 inch street elbows in all of Langley. I will be able to thread this onto here and then connect my flexible line onto here and just make my loop. A moment of truth where I can turn the water back on and let the tank start filling up and see. No leaks. Well, that's a positive sign. Okay, recharge that system. Excellent. Well, the old tank 1 is up and running again. And I just have to do the electrical connection on tank 2, the new one. And it's been, well, it's filled now. And water's been circulating through it for about 20 minutes, and happy to report there are still no leaks. It's good. I'm done. Only a couple hours longer than I want it to be. I still need to get a longer strap. The tank is slightly larger in diameter, and so I can't connect the straps quite yet. But other than that, we are back up and running. So this is a perfect example of how things don't always work out the way you plan them to. You know, when you have a tank that's not quite the same height, and you're not going to find one because the old tank is 15 years old. When it's slightly larger in diameter, when you can't move the plumbing piping around it, so you have to fit the tank in to where you're at. When your supply chain is limited as far as parts are concerned for what you can and can't do, simply based on not being able to find the right parts, things can take longer than planned. The other thing is it took over 4 hours for the hot water side of things in the school here to drain, and so that's what set me back more than anything else, really. But anyway, I'm glad it's done. I'm glad it worked, and I'm glad they have hot water back, so I can go home.